All right, we can go ahead and get started. Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining our third Future PedsRes webinar for the season. This is the LGBTQ applicant-centric webinar. We are so excited to have everyone, and we have a lot of wonderful questions to ask our esteemed group of panelists that I am sure will help you as you navigate this match season. All right, so like I said, this is the LGBTQ plus mentoring session. I am Caroline Maltese. My pronouns are she, her. I'm a fourth-year student at Penn State College of Medicine, and I am one of the co-directors for the Future PedsRes organization for this year.
Hi, my name is Stephanie Maeda. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm also a fourth-year medical student at Western University of Health Sciences, College of Osteopathic Medicine in the Pacific Northwest, and I'm one of the co-directors for Future PedsRes this year. We also want to put in a plug for our regional webinar series, which will be kicking off on July 11th, which is our first program for small pediatric programs located in the western part of the region. And then we will feature medium programs starting on July 25th, and then large programs starting on August 8th. We will also be putting a webinar link in the chat for you to register for all of our webinars, or you're welcome to scan the QR code at the bottom of the screen.
I will give you just a sec if you would like to do that to register. We would also like to say that this meeting will be recorded for any of you who would like to reference later or who were unable to join us live this evening. And we will upload to YouTube and then send the link out after the session has ended. All right, and before we start, we would like to acknowledge our APPD faculty advisor, Dr. Michael Dell, who is the Vice Chair of Education at Case Western Reserve University School of Medicine, as well as Colleen Hughes, who serves as the Associate Executive Director for APPD.
We would also like to acknowledge our ComCep faculty advisor, Dr. Rachel Thompson, who is an assistant professor of pediatrics and director of pediatric undergraduate medical education at the Boston University of Chobanian and Avadisian School of Medicine. These individuals have made tonight possible, and we are very grateful for their support.
Hello, everyone. My name is Ariel Vargas, this year's Assistant Director of Equity for LGBTQ plus applicants. My pronouns are he, him. I graduated from Universidad San Francisco de Quito School of Medicine in Ecuador. I'm currently a research fellow at Children's Hospital of Philadelphia in cardiology and echocardiography.
Hey everybody, my name is Bianca Eze. I am currently the Associate Director of Equity. My pronouns are she, her, and hers. I'm a graduate from Georgia State University with a master's in applied environmental microbiology, and I am currently a third-year medical student at St. George's University School of Medicine.
I would like to thank the entire FPR team, especially the webinars, equity, and publicity team who are working really hard to make this happen. Let me introduce to our FPR webinars team who's working really hard behind the scenes tonight.
Hi everyone, my name is Sheena Bedi. My pronouns are she, her. I am a graduate doctor from D.Y. Patil Medical College, India, and I am serving as the Associate Director of Webinars for FPR this season.
So now let's review our agenda and objectives for tonight's session. These are especially focused towards providing LGBTQ plus residency applicants with tools towards empowering themselves as strong applicants for Match 2025 residency cycle, advice on finding mentors and sponsors to help navigate the virtual season, and recommendations on how to avoid major pitfalls. So from 8 to 9 p.m., we have faculty here who will share advice for applicants and answer your much anticipated questions. Also, we have prepared 6 questions for the panelists, then we will take questions from the audience as well. Afterwards, starting 9 p.m., our amazing faculty panel will log off and our resident panel will join us from 9 to 9:30 to share their experiences and answer any questions from the audience. Okay, so let's jump right into introducing the amazing doctors who have joined us tonight. Please, if you have any questions, drop it in the chat section on Zoom, which can be found on your Zoom toolbar, and those will be answered in the Q&A section of tonight's webinar. And now, for the moment you've been waiting for, on behalf of FuturePedsRes, I'd like to give a warm welcome to our esteemed panelists tonight. Our first panelist is Dr. Jennifer Plan. She's a pediatric intensive care physician, professor of pediatrics, and division chief for pediatric critical care medicine at the University of California, Davis Health System. Her academic interests include medical education with a current focus on the clinical curriculum at her medical school. Our next esteemed panelist is Dr. Brian Lurie, the Pediatric Residency Program Director at Hasbro Children's Hospital of Brown University. Dr. Lurie graduated from Tufts University and earned his medical degree from Steckler School of Medicine, New York State American Program in Tel Aviv, Israel, and obtained a master's in public health from Columbia University Mellman School of Public Health after completing his residency at North Shore Children's Hospital in New York. Dr. Lurie is experienced in developing curricula for pediatric residents on caring for patients who are LGBTQ+. He has published on this topic and has given multiple talks and led workshops nationally focusing on LGBTQ+ care, diversity and inclusion, and social justice in medicine. Most recently, he has contributed to the development and implementation of the Levine Children's Center for Gender Health. Dr. Lurie has also served as the co-chair of both the APPD LGBTQ+ learning community and as the founder of co-chair of the APA LGBTQ+ health and wellness special interest group. Last but certainly not least, we have Dr. Lavjay Butani. He's a professor of pediatrics, a pediatric nephrologist, and medical educator in the University of California Davis Health System. He is currently president of the Council on Medical Student Education in Pediatrics. He also serves as the Vice Chair for Academic Affairs and Director of the Mentoring Program for Faculty in the Department of Pediatrics, and is the Director of Medical Student Professionalism in the School of Medicine. Within medical education, he is most passionate about reflective practice and lifelong learning. Thank you all for taking the time and being here tonight. And without further ado, let's get started with the FAQ portion of tonight's webinar. So the first question is for Dr. Plan. What are the pros and cons about being open about your sexual identity in the context of your application and during interviews?
Thank you. Thanks for that nice introduction. Can you hear me okay? Okay, I switched to the AirPods. Before I jump into this question, maybe I can tell you a little bit more about myself. Is that okay? Maybe a little bit about some other roles that I did that might be relevant to this, and maybe a little bit more about who I am personally. So much of my experience surrounding the residency application process, besides going through it, which was an increasing number of years ago as my not so covered up gray hairs indicate, I was our 4th year advisor for the Department of Peds for a handful of years. I was clerkship director with Lavjay and our 4th year specialty advisor and sort of course oversight faculty member. And I have been on our resident selection committee here at UC Davis for a number of years after doing it in Oakland when I was a trainee there. And then we started a PICU fellowship a handful of years ago, and I was PICU fellowship program director and still help with the selection process there. So I've seen this on the student end a little bit, on the residency end, and then the fellowship end. And while we're not talking about fellowships, I do think it's slightly different training phase, but some of the same concerns would come up. And then maybe this is a warning more than an introduction, but it's 5 o'clock here, so I'm at home and have 3 kids who may, especially the young one, may pop in and out. I live with my wife in Davis, California, which is about a 20-minute drive west of Sacramento, which is where the health center actually is. So I live in Davis with my wife and my 13, 11, and 7-year-olds. And I've been at UC Davis for a little bit more than 13 years. So moved here at the end of my PICU fellowship for what I like to say was my first real job, at least my first real job in medicine, and settled down. And my wife was pregnant at the time, so pretty quickly geared things up to which is what is now a life of chaos. So in terms of the pros and cons about being open about your sexual identity during the application process and interviews, I'll start this by saying maybe a couple things. And one is that I sort of realized the tension between what is ideal and how I want things to be, and how applicants may feel things are and what they experience. So I think I'm going to answer this question a bit skewed towards the pros and the cons, but also recognize that this is a very individual experience, and people maybe haven't or sort of won't have what I felt was a very sort of smooth and supportive process. And then to add, and I think this is I know this is true for Lavjay because I've heard him say this. Being a lesbian is one part of my identity, as is being a New Englander, as is being a mom, as is being a has-been soccer player. So I have sort of over the years done a lot of reflection and integrated my various identities into who I am now. And there's a lot of blurring, as evidence when I talk to my children about their nice big veins that I'd like to put an IV into. I'm pretty sure most people don't say that to our kids, but that's what you get for having a PICU mom as a doc. I mean, a PICU doc is a mom. So it's, being a lesbian is an integral part of everything that I do, as is, like I said, all those other identities that I am working on and embrace. So I'll go with the con first. Well, maybe I'll go with the pro of not being open, which I guess is a bit of a con. The residency selection process is going to be an anxiety-provoking one where you all don't feel in control of things as much as you want to be in control of them. Who invites you for interviews, when those interviews happen, who you get paired up on that interview day. Like, there's a lot that you can't control. So I think one of the things that you can control is sort of what you share about yourself, when you share it, who you share it with. So I think I think choosing to not be open about your sexual identity during the process is a way that you're sort of controlling your circumstances and maybe the impressions folks get of you. And I can appreciate wanting that sense of control a little bit. I think the pros of sharing, from my perspective, are pretty significant. And I don't think I'll be the first one to say this, but residency is a pretty intense few years of your life. You learn a ton. You make amazing friends and connections with people. I mean, last summer we had a 20th anniversary of the first day of intern year party for my residency class, which I'm pretty sure is a holiday that does not exist and was just an excuse for everyone to get together. And like 22 out of the 20 of us were there. It was pretty impressive. And that's a solid, since the beginning, well, since the end, a solid like 20 plus years. So it's an experience that's pretty formative, and hopefully you will, with all the ups and downs, look back on it like I am right now, smiling. And in order to have that experience, I think you want to be who you are and be supported for who you are through those times. And I would much rather find out during an interview process, whether it's you as an applicant finding out and deciding this place doesn't feel right to me based on how they reacted to me, or heaven forbid, gosh, I hope this doesn't happen, but a program saying like, this person doesn't feel like they would be a good fit for us for X, Y, or Z. I think you want to find that out before you commit to 3 years of your life with that group of people in that environment. And to me, that's the big pro, is that you want where you end up to love you for all of the things that you are. I also will say, based on my experience locally, that people, especially pediatrics, appreciate that diversity just makes everyone stronger. And identifying as queer, or however within the LGBTQ categories you identify, Like that is actually a strength. You bring experiences that will help your patients and their families and the colleagues that are learning alongside you. And I do truly believe that programs feel that way in many cases these days, so that it actually can I'm not suggesting anyone would try to do this, but it may actually work to your advantage in 2024, unlike what we worried about years ago. That may be a little bit of the Pollyanna perspective on things, and I'll be interested to see if we have time what the other panelists have to say about that. But I would say from my perspective that those would be the pros.
Thank you so much, Dr. Plant. And for the next question is for Dr. Lurie. What can LGBTQ plus applicants expect in terms of community and support within a residency program?
Thank you. It's great to be here tonight with all of you. Thank you for having me, and I'm excited to do this again. I did it again last year, and it was so much fun. And people actually on the interview trail told me that they came to interview at our program because I had done this, so that made me feel good too. That our residency applicants felt comfortable. My pronouns are he and him. Just a little bit more about me. I'm a general pediatrician, and I've been in medical education for about 20 years as well, traveling up and down the eastern seacoast, working at different programs, either as an associate program director or a program director. But as far as patient care, I've really taken a huge interest in working with LGBTQ youth. And as it was said in my bio, I have done a lot of work really studying how we educate our residents on this topic, on how to care for LGBTQ youth. So it's been a true joy of my career to be able to do this. I live here in Providence, Rhode Island. I'm the program director now at Brown University. My husband and I moved up here about a year ago. So this has been a year of a lot of fun, helping the program grow and change a little bit. And now that it's July 1st, we're seeing all those efforts happen today. So as you all come through on the interview trail, I can tell you how they're working. As for this question, it's a great question. I actually, we got the slides a couple of days ago and I read this question. I thought I had some answers in my mind. And then of course I started thinking about this, because I really think the answer, as many things in medicine, is it depends, right? A lot of different programs might have a lot of different ways of expressing their support for LGBTQ residents, but also a lot of different ways of building up that community. So I think it's, I may change the question a little bit to what should you all be looking for when you're applying to the different programs, and especially over virtual interviewing, how can you get a sense of what that community is like? I think one of the big things is really how open are people that day when you're on Zoom. How open are they to express their own gender identities and sexual orientations? I think that's very important if the residents are speaking about it when you have time alone with the residents, when faculty talks about it. We make sure to highlight a lot of the partners of all our residents. And there's many pictures of me and my husband and our lovely dogs throughout our presentation. And we have many slides that really highlight the partners to show that it is a supportive environment within our program. Other things you could look for is what's going on at the hospital. You want to get a real good sense of what's the culture of the hospital. Are there system resource groups for LGBTQ employees? That's something that's really exciting to look for. So you can find that community not just within your program, but within the hospital. Has the program participated in Pride events around the state, especially in this month of June, or now it's July, but this past month of June where we were celebrating Pride? We had a huge float. The hospital had a huge float in our Pride Parade, and they do this every year. So that's something that we highlight on our website and we talk about on our interview days, because it's a way to really get the applicants to know that we have a great support system and great community within our program. Other things you can look for are there just diversity, equity, and inclusion committees? Are there other DEI events that are going on within the program? Does the hospital have a DEI committee, and do the residents get to participate in that? I think all of those things help you get a sense of what the culture of the program and the culture of the hospital can be like. Is there an LGBTQ alliance with the medical school? Those are other things you want to look at. What's going on in the medical school? Do the residents participate in it? These are also great questions to ask on your interview days. Going back to the previous question, if you do choose to come out on your application, a lot of programs really try to hook you up for your interviews with someone who might also identify as LGBTQ plus, or who might work with the population. Is there a gender affirming care clinic at your office, at the program? And if not, how do they provide care to your gender diverse patients? I think these are all great questions and things you want to be looking for to really sense what the community and support within the residency program is like. I think one last thing I want to say is that most of us want to have a sense of belonging in our residency. As was said earlier, it is a tough 3 years, but it's also one of the best 3 years of your life, as well as you are going to make the best friends, some of the best friends you're going to have for the rest of your life. My residency program too, we all still keep in touch, and it was as we all worked hard together, but we really all got to know each other, and there was a great sense of belonging. So you want to get that sense from the residents too, because I think if there's a sense of belonging, it just contributes to everybody's wellness. And when you have that sense of belonging, you feel more comfortably to be who you are and to let everyone really get to know the true you. I think that's all I wanted to say for that question.
Thank you, Dr. Lurie. And for the next question, the third question is for Dr. Butani. How can LGBTQ plus applicants discuss their sexual identity in their personal statement?
Thank you, Ariel. Thank you to the leadership of FuturePedsRes for inviting us today. I am here representing myself as a gay man, and COMCEP, which is our undergraduate medical education organization, which is an extremely welcome and inclusive place, and that supports anything and everything related to pre-medical students, medical students, and into residency. So again, a huge thank you to all of you. To answer this question, again, if you were there, the kickoff webinar, I think I talked a little bit about, thinking and reflecting on what is the goal of a personal statement, and in fact, what is the goal of your entire packet, and that is to try and, find a good fit in a residency program. So to use this packet and a personal statement to get an interview and to get matched into a residency program. So always sort of keep that at the back of your mind when you are thinking about writing a personal statement. Again, I think of the personal statement as being a story. It should be a story about who you are and what's important to you. And again, you may remember, think about a personal statement as a story of your journey into medicine and into pediatrics, seminal moments in your personal or professional life that have sort of made a big impact on you, and what your thoughts are moving forward. And so I say that all as a preface to say that if your LGBTQ plus identity is an important part of your journey, either into medicine or into pediatrics, or it's something that you are really passionate about and have done work on, or something that you want to continue to sort of put your efforts in, then absolutely you should mention that in your personal statement. I don't think anyone should feel necessarily obliged to talk about being, a member of the LGBTQ plus community if it is not something which I think, as Jen mentioned, if it's not necessarily something which is an important part of your professional role. I also want to highlight the importance of what I mentioned earlier also, which was the importance of internal consistency. So again, in your entire packet, if you are highlighting how being an LGBTQ plus applicant has had a significant impact or a role in your decision to go into medicine or pediatrics, please do make sure that the rest of your packet sort of supports that. What activities have you done? What volunteer work have you done? What research work have you done to further the care of LGBTQ plus patients or peers or others? If you mention this as really a key or an important element of your professional statement, but the work that you've done has been in completely different fields, then I don't think you would be doing yourself a service. And I'll finish off just by saying that if you are somewhat hesitant to be completely out in a personal statement, you can certainly talk about your commitment towards DEI just in a very broad sense. And again, the work that you have done and your commitment and your passion related to the DEI community without necessarily specifically going into details. But I would echo, everyone else who's spoken before me, is that if this is something which is important to you, remember you're going to be spending a large part of your personal and professional life in a place, and you really want to make sure that the people that you work with, the people that you who are sort of your seniors and the faculty and staff at the hospital are all welcoming, not just even tolerant, but welcoming of who you are in your entirety. And so you have really little to lose in discussing this if, again, it is an important identity that you want to highlight. And I will stop with that.
Thank you, Dr. Butani. So for the next questions, these are directed to all panelists, so feel free to unmute yourself if you would like to respond. This fourth question is similar to what Dr. Lurie already responded, but I'm sure Dr. Plant and Dr. Butani will have useful information to add. So the question is, what are some key indicators or green flags of an LGBTQ plus friendly program?
So I'm happy to, I think Dr. Lurie mentioned a lot of things to be looking for. I would say, just to add on to that, look for diversity statements, and not only for the residency program, but the overall GME webpage. Look for statements related to diversity on, I think, as you mentioned, the health systems website, because you want to see, and then even the School of Medicine, because often in many places, these efforts are sometimes coordinated across UME, GME, the faculty world, and so on and so forth. And so you may come across tons of resources that you might become aware of. And I think that might tell you how friendly a program is. I know that some residency programs used to have a sort of a diversity day. I don't know if we still have that or if that's, a diversity second look. And so I think that will give you a clear message that there is a residency program that is interested and is committed to diversity, equity, and inclusion. And then, of course, word of mouth is extremely important, and your mentors and advisors who can tell you what might be more welcoming places. I don't know, Dr. Plant or Dr. Lurie, if you have other thoughts?
I think you listed many of what I had come up with. I was going to add the idea about sort of looking at the GME sites as a whole, for programs that are a little bit bigger institutions. They may have committees or other groups of residents that come together that you could get in touch with if you were curious as well.
I think the only other thing I would add too, and I mentioned a little bit, is when you're speaking to the residents, I think you'll get a good feel as well. And many of the residents who do identify as LGBTQ plus and are out within the program are usually telling their stories during interview days as well, if you're meeting with them. And I think that's a huge indicator of it's a great green flag of how open and friendly the program is. You could also look for like the subtle things, that we tend to do as programs, is having an LGBT, a rainbow flag somewhere up in the office that's behind you when you're doing your Zoom interviews, or looking for like the HRC symbol. So even little things like that are just ways that we're trying to let you know that we're friendly programs.
Thank you. So for the next question, it's how can LGBTQ plus, what are some common challenges that LGBTQ plus residents face during residency?
I think this also depends on the program a little bit, and the culture of the program, the culture of the institution. There could be, some challenges are whether or not they feel comfortable and safe to come out in that institution. And, that's a big challenge for a lot of LGBTQ plus residents. Studies have shown that even if you are out in medical school, that you may not be out in your application process or when you first get to residency, despite of how whether or not you were out prior to residency. So I think the first challenge is, do I feel comfortable and safe coming out at this institution? And I believe all of us have sort of answered what, you could figure that out during the interview process as well, if you'll feel that way. But it's just a sense of, just feeling like you belong and you could be yourself is huge indicator of how well you're going to feel during your residency. And wellness is so important to us as program directors and faculty. We really want you to feel well throughout your time with us. I think some other challenges that we've seen across the country is especially for some of our gender diverse patients, is being called by the wrong name or the wrong pronouns. And that is something that we take seriously when that happens, and we provide education. Our medical school actually, we put out a slide every month on just how we could always be doing better for diversity, equity, and inclusion. Even if we're doing great, there's always room for improvement. So our slide for June actually was about misgendering and what to do if that occurs and how we could do better. So I do think there are always some challenges that you're going to face during residency.
I do think too, and this is maybe less common and more specific to the times. I think we live in a bit of a tumultuous political time right now, and I'm not quite so sure what the next handful of years will hold in store for us. And I think those experiences may be very different in different cities and different parts of the countries. For medical residents and LGBTQ plus people of lots of different walks of life. So I think we're fortunate that there are so many PEDS residency programs around this country, and it's a time when I think you all will take into consideration where in the country you may want to be over the next handful of years, and maybe that'll be in a place where you're, you know, fighting this battle at ground zero, and maybe it'll be a place like what feels a little bit more like a haven among the chaos. But the, you know, your city, your region, you know, your state, your region, I think could have a big effect on us personally, which inevitably affects what you spend, you know, upwards of 80 hours of your life doing. And I think that's just, to me, reinforces the message from the start here, which is to try to find a place where you feel you can be yourself and you feel supportive, because that's, you know, how we're all going to get through.
I don't have anything to add.
Okay, thank you. For the last question for the panelists we have, how can LGBTQ plus applicants identify mentors within a residency program who are supportive or of diverse identities?
So I think there are, you know, most residency programs, or I would assume most residency programs will pair up interns with a mentor. And so clearly, if you've already identified yourself as a member of the LGBTQI community, or again, something that you're passionate about, or even just passionate about DEI related work, hopefully your residency program will try and find a faculty member as a mentor who sort of has some shared interests, goals, or passions with you. If not, I think, again, if you feel like you're in a place where you belong and you're comfortable, you should go ahead and ask your chief residence or whoever you feel is most approachable, whether it's the APD or the program director, if it's important for you to have a mentor who belongs to the same community as you. And then lastly, I think once you know, most of us have more than one mentor. Once you arrive in a place, you will just organically find the people who you relate to most, whatever that bond might be, and never hesitate to sort of approach them and ask them to be an additional mentor for you. Nobody will say no. Those are just some things that come to my mind.
I agree with everything that Dr. Butani just said.
Okay, wonderful. Well, thank you guys so much for your input. We really do appreciate it. Now we'd like to open the floor to any questions that we may have from the Zoom chat. There are a few questions that some students that I know did come up with. One of them is, when you are advising LGBTQ applicants, does the new political climate in some states come into play? And has your advice changed based on any recent laws?
That's a great question. And it's probably it's a hard question to answer, because there's a lot of factors that play into where people apply for residency and choose to actually go on to do their residency. So I bring it up a lot when I'm advising as something to think about, but I never will say, don't do your residency here because of these laws, don't do your residency here because of this culture. don't do your residency here because of A, B, or C. I think that's a decision that every applicant has to make for themselves, and where they are going to feel the most comfortable for their 3 years. And it could be, I want to go to that state because I'm really into advocacy, and I think I can do a lot to advocate for patients in those states who identify as being gender diverse or or any part of the LGBTQ plus community. And then there are some people who say, I know I'm going to be much more comfortable and feel like I could be myself in a place where those laws might not exist and the culture might be a little different. I do think it's everyone's decision to make, and I would never put my own personal beliefs into anyone else's decisions. So I think it's more just laying out both sides and the pros and cons of doing your residency in different types of places around the country.
Thank you so much, Dr. Lurie. The next question we have from the chat is, how can individuals be better allies towards our LGBTQ plus colleagues in medicine?
How can individuals be better allies? I guess as I think about this, to me, I see sort of parallels with how can you be better allies with anyone who's sort of being minoritized or discriminated against. So that's one way to think about that is, having the willingness and the ability to step up when you see microaggressions, when you see bias, when you see people say things that are not professional or respectful or outright disrespectful. So that's our one extreme. But on the other hand, there are so many initiatives to promote diversity, equity, and inclusion, and anti-racist initiatives that I think we sometimes feel that people can only be members of these initiatives or groups or organizations or go to, pride parades and marches if you are a member of that organization. And that is so not true. I think the thing that gives me the greatest joy is seeing, straight people come and express their support, their enthusiasm, walk with me and join me in many of these advocacy initiatives. And I think supporting colleagues in that sense can be really powerful. Dr. Plant might remember this, but we had a panel discussion several months ago for the first year medical students, where a panel of LGBTQ plus faculty just talked about their personal stories. And there were very few students who attended. And one of the students was like, we're so disappointed why our colleagues are not here. Does it mean that they don't support us, that they don't, see us as sort of equal human beings? And so that's one example of, step up for others and sort of be walking hand in hand with them in any of these activities. And I'll stop at that and see if our other panelists have other thoughts.
I think that was very well put, Lavjay. I do remember the student having that experience, and I think they're in our little microcosm of Davis, California. We've had some issues with a very loud mother, woman in town who has very publicly been mostly anti-trans, but sort of attacked much of the queer community. And people, when various things happen, people will say, "I'm so sorry, that must be so horrible." And I'll say, it's absolutely horrible. But I've been so moved by how many of my friends in town how they've reacted to it, how upset they've been, all of the things that they're doing to show their support in response, sort of to counter what this individual or small group of individuals is doing. And sometimes it can be as little as, even if your pronouns are cis pronouns that people would predict, like put your pronouns next to your name, to just normalize that people have a say about their pronouns and would like people to respect pronouns. Like having a flag on your badge, which we will frequently do for our patients, a sticker that somehow represents the colors of the queer community. Seeing a little sticker here and there, it's like I don't even notice it anymore at Davis because it's so prevalent. But I remember when it was a little bit less so, like that, those little gestures meaning a lot. So I think normalizing diversity helps the folks who are the minority feel like there's more of a spectrum, rather than it's just the folks that are the minority having to be the ones that identifying themselves that way. I don't know if that makes sense. But I think that there are lots of little gestures to just say, like, hey, I'm supportive, I'm an ally, or hey, these are my pronouns, what are your pronouns? I think can really mean a lot.
Thank you so much for your input. It's interesting that you both, Dr. Play and Dr. Butani, talk about discrimination and uncomfortable interactions, because we actually have questions based on that. One specifically is based on discrimination. How do programs specifically deal with discrimination against LGBTQ physicians during residency?
I could start. We have a whole protocol for any discrimination for anyone who identifies as a marginalized population. We have a very stepwise approach. We have a vice chair of diversity, equity, and inclusion in our department, and we've created this new system this year. It's called RudeNet. So anyone can anonymously report someone who discriminated against a resident for any reason. And that automatically so our vice chair, it goes to our vice chair of diversity, equity, and inclusion. And the first step is education, speaking to the, we let the person know that they were identified as discriminating against somebody, and we start with the education there. If it continues to happen, it gets escalated up to our chairman of our department, as well as to one of the medical directors of the entire hospital. A lot of times it will then go into their record, and if it becomes something that is being identified over and over and over again and not changed with education, and then the person would actually be let go. So we've developed this policy to really, and we publicize the policy often for the residents and for the faculty, so everyone knows that we do have this policy in place and that we do not tolerate discrimination within our program or within the hospital.
Yeah, I'm under the impression that most GME programs and UME and schools of medicine will have, hopefully you all do, a pretty standard approach when there are concerns of mistreatment of students, residents, other trainees, that we would put discrimination in there. And that for us, in my experience, and Lavjay, correct me if I'm wrong, is frequently sort of peers, supervisors. I do think another category is discrimination from from families, patients, which is feels even more complicated to me since we're caring for them. And I would say maybe Dr. Lurie, as a program director, you can comment. I think that programs are aware of that possibility. I'm not sure if programs or sort of policies to handle it are quite as common.
Yeah, I would say the policies are probably not as common in those situations that I've seen. I do think I feel like this has been a conversation often at the Association of Pediatric Program Directors. There's been some workshops on this too, and I think I agree with you, Dr. Plant. I think it's a little more complicated, and that's where the discussion tends to go, because we're caring for these patients, but we also have to protect our residents and our learners, our students, our fellows. So it's a fine balance of how to address it. A lot of times we do turn to, at least for me with our residents, we'll turn to our resident and ask, how would you like us to proceed with this? And sometimes it's, oh, I just wanted to mention it to you that it happened. I don't want anything to happen. I don't want to do anything further. And sometimes it's, I want to be removed from this patient's care, from taking care of the patient. And we've then had the conversation with the family as to why we're removing the resident, that they feel uncomfortable and unsafe. And that doesn't always go great, because the patient sometimes will get very angry with us. And sometimes it's, oh, I didn't mean it like that, or, a little bit of backstepping. So it's complicated, and it's uncomfortable, but we're always willing to do what our resident wants us to do, and to make sure that our learners are consistently safe in every environment.
Okay, thank you so much. Due to time winding down, I'll just ask one more question. Is there such a thing as being too honest about your sexual identity, specifically when applying for residency?
I don't think there's sort of getting back to the theme of the importance of being able to be your true self, true authentic self. I don't think really too honest. I hope there's not such a thing, but something, Dr. Butani, Lavjay, that you said about the personal statement, and making sure you really highlight your strengths and what your work is. And so I guess I would just say there's, for better or worse, not that much time that you spend in interviews, interacting in whatever Zoom social events they have. So be yourself, and make sure you're all of yourself, and that you get a chance to talk about all of the amazing other identities you have, and things that you've done, and goals for your career, and just to make sure you find a time to fit all that in, and balance that with the sort of the identity and history and experiences you're sharing related to your whether it's sexual orientation, how you identify in terms of gender, etc.
Okay, thank you so much for all your questions that were left in the Zoom chat. And since it's getting close to an hour, we would like to thank Dr. Plant, Dr. Lurie, and Dr. Butani for their insightful comments tonight and their continued support of the LGBTQ plus students, healthcare workers, and patients.
Thank you all.
And now we'll be transitioning to our resident fellow-led panel, students and other participants. We ask you to stay if you have any questions for them.
Thank you for having us.
Yes, and we would just like to thank all of our panelists again. We really appreciate your insights and you being here and supporting our students, and letting those of us who are not in the LGBTQ community also know how we can be better allies to our LGBTQ friends. So we appreciate that so much, and thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Good luck.
Thank you, guys. We are going to go ahead and stop our recording right now. We are having our resident hop on in just 1 second. So let me do this where I'm going to stop the recording and then I am going